were well intended. But the fact is, it drives up your health insurance cost. Secondly, we need to allow the sale of insurance across state lines to increase competition. When you eliminate the mandates, one of the benefits you'll be able to have other companies selling health insurance in the state. The result is the consumer is empowered to select the benefits and the type of plan that they want, okay, rather than what the government thinks they need, okay? We buy auto insurance that way. The result is we have a lot more competition in the private market of auto insurance, and people make changes, and the result is that they get a better value for their dollar. The next thing is we want to make insurance affordable for all families with refundable tax credits. Based on a sliding scale, rather than put people on Medicaid, on individual insurance that reimburses hospitals at a rate that they actually lose money, and then they have to cost shift to private insurance, which drives the private insurance premiums up. One analysis I've seen, cost shifting in hospitals increases private healthcare insurance premiums as much as 42%. So your individual health insurance premium or group is 42% higher because they're cost shifting to make up for the losses in Medicaid and also the Medicare program. So if we can get people onto an individual plan, then the hospitals and doctors will be reimbursed at a much better rate than they will on a welfare program. The result is they can also keep the health insurance for their lifetime. If their income increases, of course, they would have to pay the premium. The tax credits would primarily apply to lower income people, although upper income people would also have tax deductibility or a partial to tax credit depending where they fell on the income scale. The next thing is we form a state-based high-risk pool for those with pre-existing or uninsurable conditions. Well, we already have a form of that we could use. It's called the Minnesota Comprehensive Health Association. It's administered by a private company, and you could modify it so that people with pre-existing or high-risk pool could qualify, and there might be some subsidy involved to keep the premiums reasonable, along with additional tax credits depending on the loss ratio of the plan. Finally, we need to reform medical malpractice insurance, setting limits and caps on settlements. There's several studies on this. One that comes to mind is, I think it's by Price Waterhouse. They did a study nationally, and they found that 93% of the doctors practice what's known as defensive medicine. Defensive medicine is where the doctor orders additional tests because they're afraid of being sued, okay? So the figure that comes to mind is that costs the healthcare system over $200 billion additional a year. Now if a doctor makes a mistake, there needs to be a consequence, okay? Nobody's saying there shouldn't be, but we cannot afford to be compensating trial lawyers and the patient at a rate that drives the cost of health insurance to a point where we cannot afford it, okay? The rest of us can't afford it. So there has to be some caps and limits. Texas has a nice model to look at in terms of limiting medical malpractice insurance. They've done that, I think, about 7 years ago. The result is they've actually had an increase in the number of doctors, even in their rural area. The figure that comes to mind, I believe it's over 7,000 doctors. People need to understand when you have high cost, like medical malpractice and other costs for doctors, it drives them out of the less populated rural area into the metro areas. The result is our rural citizens have less health care and actually are more endangered in terms of their, if they develop a sickness or have an accident, because of the fewer doctors that are in the rural area. So we desperately need healthcare reform. Unfortunately, the DFL, both at the federal and the state level, are going in the completely wrong direction. They're going to increase costs. We know private health insurance has already gone up because of Obamacare mandates, and will continue to do. You're going to have increased costs, and you're going to have less care ultimately, because nameless, faceless government bureaucrats are going to decide how much care you get, when you get it, and how long you have to wait.
Let's jump over to education now. You've been on the school board for a while, lots of experience. Education, largest chunk of our budget. 40% of the budget is K through 12. Another 9% of the budget is higher ed. And now they want early education. They want our children cradle to grave.
Yeah, I'm quite familiar with ECFE, and let me just speak to that first. I understand some of the needs for the ECFE program, okay? My disagreement with the program is primarily, number one, it's run by the government, and then you get all types of government laws and regulations and mandates from well-meaning professors who don't really, some of whom probably don't have children themselves. They're making up the rules. Number two, you have a lot of well-meaning people involved in the ECFE. But I'll give you an experience. When I was on the school board, we were in a deficit situation. And ECFE program, people from there came and they wanted additional money from K-12 budget.
Of course they want money.
Right. The fact is we didn't have enough money to do what we're supposed to be doing, K-12, okay? So I actually voted against, giving out the additional money. And of course, you're right away hit with, well, you don't care about the children, okay? If I've heard that once, I've heard it 100 times over the years, okay? My response is this. I happen to have an experience in my own life where I had an opportunity to do prison ministry, okay? I did that for 13 years prior to being on the public school board. I went two Sunday nights a month, away from my family, away from my wife, and from things I could do, into the prison to spend time with people who'd made some bad choices and, were suffering the consequences in most cases. Well, nobody paid me to do that. I cared enough about the people in prison for 13 years to take a couple Sunday nights a month and spend time with them and try to help them and point them in a better direction so they wouldn't have to wind back up in jail again, okay? So what I said to the ECFE people, I said, listen, why do you have to have, you claim to care so much about the children, then why do you have to have money in order to care? So that does beg the question. If you don't have the money, nobody's stopping you from doing the programs, okay? You can still do them. So it does beg the question, do you care more about the money or the children? Because if we don't give you the money, you claim you can't help the children. Well, there's nothing stopping you from helping the children, any more than there was something stopping me from spending time with those prisoners. And I got another good suggestion for them. If the public sees that you're doing something worthwhile, okay, we live in one of the most generous states and nation in the world. Nobody gives more to people in time of need than the American citizen, okay? And Minnesota is probably as good as any state or better in terms of responding to needs like that. So if people see you're doing something worthwhile with these small children, guess what? They'll probably contribute to your cause. Now, if what you're doing isn't really helping, they're probably not going to contribute. But if what you're doing does help, they'll contribute to your cause. Now, the state could actually make it tax deductible to contribute to an ECFE program and get the government funding out. Let individuals, private individuals or businesses, make a tax deductible contribution to the program. If you're not doing a good job, you're going to go away, which you should. If you're doing a good job, you're going to get the contributions and the children are going to be helped by what you do. But this mandated education by government, you're going to get it no matter whether, good, bad, or ugly, you're getting it, and you're going to and the money's going to have all the strings tied to it by some well-meaning psychologist or therapist from someplace, and who probably doesn't know how to raise kids himself. Needs to be changed and changed dramatically. I know that's going to offend some people. I'm not criticizing the ECFE program or the individuals involved, but we got to change the way we fund. I'd like to get to the demographic changes. Some comments from our state demographer. His name is Ton Gillespie. But he just finished a report not too long ago where he showed that if we don't do meaningful reform on health care, okay, because of the aging population, we're going to have a smaller group of younger people, and we're going to have an increased number of baby boomers retiring. And their health needs and their retirement needs are going to drain the state budget. And here are his conclusions. Minnesota faces a fiscal trap driven by demographic economic forces. Here's his points. Number one, spending pressures will increase, driven largely by issues of aging and health. Spending pressures, that means of the state of Minnesota. Number two, state spending will shift its focus from education, infrastructure, which is transportation, and higher education to care and support of the aging. Okay? Number 3, revenue growth will slow. Efforts to increase it will meet resistance. And finally, the issue is a long-run structural one. Short-run solutions will not solve the problem. And what all of us have to understand as citizens in the state of Minnesota, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent, we have to solve the health care crisis problem. And we're going in the more government in healthcare is not going to solve the problem. It's only going to make it worse. So listen to me real carefully, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or an Independent, or whatever you are. If we don't solve that healthcare crisis, you're going to have less money for education. You're going to have less money for transportation. You're going to have less money for higher education. So if you're a parent with children, support candidates that will bring private market solutions to healthcare. Government is only going to raise the cost and make healthcare worse. Please, from the bottom of my heart, whether you're in my district or not, check out where your candidate stands on healthcare reform. We must move towards the private market sector solutions that will bring you lower cost on your premiums and better access to health care. I can't say it any plainer than that.
It's amazing, your command of the issues. It's very impressive, Glenn Gruenhagen. I'm so pleased.
Well, thank you.
Now I want you to look the voters square in the eye. We're down to our last minute here. Tell them why they should vote for Glenn Gruenhagen.
What you do when you vote for Glenn Gruenhagen is you get a person who's had a variety of experiences, which I think will serve the public well in terms of bringing meaningful solutions to state budget problems and help grow private sector jobs. What I mean by that, I was raised on a dairy farm. I've got the rural background. Number 2, I've got an expertise in the area of healthcare. I've been involved with it for 32 years. It's a main issue at the state level. Number 3, I've had 15 years experience on the public school board. I've negotiated contracts. I understand the system. I understand the programs, and I believe I can bring meaningful reform and cost savings to that particular area of the state budget. And again, whether it's healthcare or education, it desperately needs some reforms. So those are some of the reasons. Oh, by the way, I'm also a veteran. I served 2 years in the Marine Corps. I'm married to a beautiful wife, Emily. She's a wonderful asset to me. We got 3 daughters and 4 grandchildren. I'm also a member of Rotary and the American Legion, and an NRA member.
Best of luck, Glenn Gruenhagen. I enjoyed chatting with you.
Hey, best of luck to you, Sue, and Lord bless you, and thanks for having me on.